Hello everybody, welcome to Deluxe Collectibles, and today I'm going to be discussing whether or not we could see a large-scale villain team up in a future Ninjago season. And I was kind of thinking about this because of course we've seen villains take on the ninjas separately in each season, and we've seen a couple of times of course them working together, even stuff like for example in season 4 when you have of course sort of two villains with Chen and Klaus as well working together. But I think it would be interesting if maybe somehow we could have some of the previous villains return in a future season and then kind of end up working together. I think something like that could be interesting to see. Of course, we'd seen previous things like this, I suppose, like in Day of the Departed, which of course not a super well-liked special for Ninjago, but still you got to see a little bit of that in that special, and I think something like that could be really intriguing. But of them actually returning, like actually getting to come back into the series, of course there's a lot of discussions and theories regarding Nautocon's return. At some point it's been teased quite a bit in the series lately of course seeing Nautocon's T-bot just everywhere kind of roaming around, and then of course people trying to count up all of the wishes that have been made, and it's definitely seems to be building to something in the background of us getting to see him potentially return at some point, and that would be interesting to kind of see if they would end up teaming up. I even think of it or compare it more so to something like the Sinister Six, of course, from Spider-Man. I think that something like that could be really interesting to see, because of course we have something like, let's say, the Vengestone buyer, who could maybe end up being the boss who's kind of in the shadows, kind of controlling everything, and then we can see some of these more low-level villains, or at least low-level in comparison. Of course, people like Nautocon and things like that are definitely high-level villains, but still kind of like in that lower rank, and then trying to go up against the ninja. I think that could be interesting. I even think ones that are very likely to sort of see this happening with are ones like, let's say, Ultraviolet, people like that, characters like that we see, of course the Mechanic, ones like that who we have seen in supporting roles like that before previously, of course with, let's say, Ultraviolet helping out the Quiet One, Harumi, and then of course ones like the Mechanic helping out Unagami in Prime Empire. So I definitely think something like that, a role for the villains, could be really intriguing, but just on a larger scale where they can go more hand to hand with the ninja, because of course most of the time those villains, like ones like the Mechanic and Ultraviolet, don't get me wrong, they can be a force to be reckoned with, but I feel like most of the time the ninja are pretty easily able to overcome that. But I think it could definitely be a cool thing for them to sort of explore with kind of bringing in some of the previous villains and seeing how that would sort of affect the series. Even something like recently I did a video talking about the potential of Moro returning to the series, and if you want to check that video you can if you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts on the potential of that. But I think of a character like that return, it would be interesting to see, because of course he was a villain, but then I would say by the conclusion of season 5 he really had kind of changed his perspective in those final moments, it seems. So maybe we could see something like that where he's a little bit with a conflict of what side he should sort of be on. So I think that could be interesting to explore, and of course I want to see new villains as well for Ninjago. I think that's something really important for the series, and maybe even introducing new villains. I'm not even saying that you totally would have to make something like a Sinister Six, doesn't have to be 6 members of course, but using it as the example, I think that you don't exactly have to have all returning villains. You can just have some new ones, maybe even some more recent ones as well. Of course we have villains like the one that showed up at the beginning of Seabound, who I'm right now blanking on the name of, but you know, the villain from the first episode of Seabound. I'll probably put up the name for the character, but I think that she was definitely a really cool one, and of course seems to be connected to the Vengestone buyer. So something like that where I think we could sort of see all these connecting points and then sort of build it around, and I think that would be cool. Kind of have a mystery throughout the whole season where the ninja are tracking down these different villains, and then it's leading them closer and closer to discovering the identity of the Vengestone buyer. And you could even separate it up with like the season format by having it be something similar to like how season 8 and season 9 connected with each other, and then you could even do something similar like how they had a March of the Oni thing, maybe do something like that to sort of conclude the story, maybe in a bit of a longer format, because I think people like longer formats like that. But I think it could be interesting to see that split up. You spend the next season, the first season of 2022, sort of engaged in this mystery, kind of trying to track down what's going on, and then at the end you find out who it is, and then the next season is all about dealing with that and how it sort of affects the team and what they have to do to overcome this obstacle. And I think that could be cool too, because you can tie in even bringing in some other people to wind up helping the ninja, and then it's sort of just all surmounts into them sort of being able to bring back returning characters, or like original like legacy characters. Basically people like Skylar, who I know is probably going to end up returning. Of course, I've done a few videos on that as well, but I think stuff like that on both the good side and the evil side, I think that could be really cool to explore that. So I would just like to see some returning characters. You could probably tell from this whole video that is what I would like to see, but also some new villains as well, I think would be pretty cool to see as well. So definitely a lot of cool things that they could end up exploring at some point in the future. So I would like to see that, but let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. Would you like to see some returning villains in future Ninjago seasons, or is that something that you wouldn't really care to see? I also did do a video where I went over every big villain from Ninjago and sort of discussed the likelihood of whether or not I think they could return at some point in the future. So let me know if you would like to, like, what do you think is the likelihood for each villain of them returning? So let me know all of that down below, and if you did enjoy this video, it would be highly appreciated if you could leave a like. Also subscribe as well if you would like to check out some of my other content. That would be highly appreciated. So thanks so much. I will see you all next time, and always remember, keep on collecting.